All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Chip Chat. This is episode number 3. We are here today, me and my boy Jose, who are doing this podcast together. Third week of us doing it. We've got Jose's YouTube, Jose's Twitter in the description. Make sure you check him out. This was an exciting week. This was a very fun week. A lot of stuff happened this week, and we've got to all break it down in this episode. First of all, Jose, how was your week?
Pretty good, pretty excited. I mean, next week is NVDA Earnings, so I'm just prepped for the next week. So I'm happy it wasn't too crazy on my end because I know next week is going to be pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely this week is the precursor to what will be a monumental week, or what's going to be a pretty tough week. And so, speaking of stocks that are going to go up and go down, and stocks that have gone and have gone down, SMCI. SMCI hit it. We start the podcast every week talking about SMCI, but like we gotta talk about SMCI. SMCI went up 289% year to date at one point when it was at $1,074 a share, 55 million shares outstanding. Currently, it is at $817. It fell 20% today from 1,069 all the way back to here to 817. If you had puts that expired today on SMCI, they went up 1,500%.
Insane.
And well, which is insane, but you have to take a big risk assuming you would go down to around $800, which is down 20% in a day. But if you did, you made 15x in basically a couple hours. And then someone on Wall Street Bets, this story is going viral. They lost $70,000 out of a $90,000 portfolio because they bought $1,000 strikes on SMCI expiring today. And that obviously did not end up going too well. If we take a look at this here, they wrote in the post, somebody, some whale out there, please come in and give us a big green candle on SMCI. Please send this thing back up so I can sell and just break even or only lose 20K. That whale did not come in. So what was your reaction, Jose, to the collapse we saw from SMCI? And did you think this was probably going to happen?
I mean, the crazy thing with SMCI, this is one that has definitely just been running up. And unfortunately, with if you want to call it a bubble or whatever, I personally think it's to some extent a bubble here with what we're seeing with SMCI. It can keep going, right? It could keep going. So that's why even with companies that you think are in a bubble, it's so hard to kind of place either buy puts or kind of bet against it because you don't know how long the market could be irrational. I'm actually a little bit, I don't know, excited is the word because obviously it's messed up to think of someone losing money, but it just kind of brings back reality to kind of the semiconductor space that, hey, look, it's not going to always be super green for the semiconductor industry right now. A lot of the semiconductor industry is actually in still huge inventory correction outside of the AI market, right? So it just kind of brings us back to reality that, hey, it's not always flowers here in the semiconductor space.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And we're going to talk about NVIDIA as well in a second. But SMCI's largest customer for their server racks is NVIDIA. And their second largest customer is a company that NVIDIA has backed in terms of they've invested in them. So like really NVIDIA earnings are going to determine a lot, but it just goes to show, I think the people that were gambling on SMCI with kind of options that are expiring in the next week or today, they just thought stuff goes up forever. And I mean, Jose, you've been in the markets long enough to know stuff does not go up forever. SMCI, if you just look at their chart, I mean, there's a red candle there today, but that chart doesn't make any sense at some point, right? Like that chart, if we look at the 5-year on this thing, this is just insane.
Holy smokes. That is, yeah.
This is King Kai at Six
Yeah.
Flags.
And like obviously I'm super excited about NVIDIA, right? And I feel like sometimes my excitement for NVIDIA gets lost as the perma bull. I'm not a perma bull for NVIDIA. I understand over inventory corrections can happen in this industry no matter what. We've seen it in 2018, we've seen it in 2020, 21, 22. So I understand there's risk in this market. I'm just overly excited for the long-term potential. If you tell me, hey, Jose, is NVIDIA going to still be $1 trillion company within the next 12 months, I'm going to say, I don't know. It's a gamble. But if you were to tell me, Jose, do you think NVIDIA will be still $1 trillion company 5 years from now, a multi-trillion dollar? I would say yes. The possibility for me is pretty high. So I'm a perma bull in the long term when we look at NVIDIA, but I do believe that in the short term, the market tends to smack us in the back of the head pretty much. So
For people buying in SMCI right now, though, you just said NVIDIA is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar company. If that's the case, wouldn't SMCI eventually become a multi-$100 billion company? right?
I wouldn't I want to say one of the bullish cases for SMCI is that they are first to market compared to some of the legacy players out there. But NVIDIA partners up with a lot of other server makers. Maybe they're not as fast as SMCI, but it's not such a heavy moat. The turnaround, right? There's obviously other growth opportunities for SMCI, like their liquid cooling that we talked about. But if we kind of just think about the rack building, the legacy players, they're obviously slower to the market, but there's always the possibility that they can turn around. And Nvidia, at the end of the day, just wants to sell products. So if the other players out there, they have partnerships with Foxconn, with Dell, with HP, and with the Cisco, with all their Blade servers. So I think at the end of the day, is whoever can build it fast, and it's such a market that even the legacy players can turn around and become a big partner with Nvidia in the future. So that's why for me, for SMCI, I definitely see a growth opportunity for it, but not something I personally would invest in.
So, okay, so then let's move on to the next topic, and we'll do NVIDIA earnings at the end. By the way, for anyone who has any questions, we saw the last podcast, you guys had a bunch of questions. Just put them in the chat, and we'll do Q&A at the end of the podcast. So any questions at all about semiconductor stuff, and we'll do it in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, we had some great earnings, like Applied Material reported, which still with the semiconductor equipment, the auto industry is like, it just any question in general. It doesn't really have to be with NVIDIA or any of these right now.
So let's talk about Soundhound. Okay, so they got the magic touch by Jensen Huang. It used to be the Buffett touch, but now it's the Huang touch. NVIDIA invested in them. Stock went up 60%. I don't know much about this company other than they are an AI voice processing company, and there's a lot of applications for natural language processing in regards to human voice, and I think they're trying to be like the central place where all that gets done. But did it deserve to be up 60%? I don't really know. So what are your thoughts on that in regards to how the market reacted, but also if you want to pull up anything else in regards to what Soundhound does?
Yeah, let me just share my screen really quick here.
And yes, Rocco, we can see X questions. So on Twitter, you can put your question in the chat on Twitter. We can see that as well.
So let me know if you can see my screen real quick.
Yep.
So NVIDIA, I think Wednesday or Thursday, posted their 13F for the first time. And here in the 13F, for those that are not familiar, NVIDIA has, I'm not sure why they had to. I'm pretty sure there's some reason why they had to, but it kind of report all their public positions that they own. And there's 5 companies here that they reported that they own: ARM Holdings, NanoX Imaging, Recursion, Soundhound, and Too Simple. I do want to say this is the first time we've seen the 13F from NVIDIA. And normally with 13F, what ends up happening is they don't tell you when they bought, but when big firms do it, most people just look at the prior 13F, which was reported usually a quarter before, and the current 13F. And that's how one determines, hey, look, in the past 3 months or so, this firm has bought this many shares, has kind of sold out of these positions. Because this is the first time NVIDIA has kind of shown this, we don't know when a lot of these investments came through. Luckily, I kind of did some Googling here and there, and I found out with ARM Holdings that actually happened during the IPO process. The IPO process was in September of 2023, so a few months ago. NanoX Technology was one that they invested in. Not directly through NanoX. They actually had ownership in some other company that got acquired by NanoX. And I guess through the acquisition, they ended up picking up some shares. I mean, I'm pretty sure we can hear the value. It's only 380,000. I'm pretty sure some people watching this video might have a portfolio bigger than 380,000. So it's not that crazy amount. Then Recursion is the only one that I own out of this list. They have about 75 million. Soundhound, and that one they invested actually on June 2023. They invested about 50 million in that company, and since then it's actually up about 50%. And it makes sense that the total value is roughly 50% higher from their initial investment. So I don't believe they purchased anything new of Recursion since their initial investments. Soundhound, another one, they only have about 3 million. This is something that I read that they've invested since 2017, and it doesn't seem like they really increased their overall shares here. And the last one was Too Simple. Too Simple, unfortunately, is a trucking company that's focusing on AI solutions, but they are closing their business here in the United States. So it's one I really wouldn't care about. So Soundhound, I mean, I was looking at them yesterday. It's very
Have you paid attention to them at all in the AI space or?
To Soundhound, no. The only one in the
Okay.
AI space out of the list is Recursion here, and obviously Arm Holding. But Soundhound definitely is focusing in kind of this generative AI space. I do have a company I own called Sorens, and I do want to say they're competitors to the space. Um, Soundhound, because of this, obviously I'm not going to invest purely because NVIDIA invested, but I am very excited about the AI space, and Soundhound definitely looks interesting. Market cap of less than $1 billion. This is not a reason to go buy, but I do believe it's a reason to take a closer look at this company in the future because they definitely have a lot of AI, voice AI solutions that can be used in various industries.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Google came out with something today saying that they're working on a way to use AI based automated voices to get you to a representative before you have to call. So if I'm calling Bank of America and I need to talk to a representative, Google's saying they're working on some product that you could like press a button and some AI will go through the robotic stuff up until the point where it gets to the representative, and then it gives you a ding, and then boom, you can talk to the real person. Again, making your lives easier, more efficient, more effective, etc. The way I understood Soundhound is there, and I got some ads on Instagram the other day for them because I went to their website. They are trying to say, hey, there's so many tasks in life that can be automated by just speaking. And you need a large level of computational power for it to be understood in terms of what the words you say in order for a task to be executed. And from an enterprise perspective and a consumer perspective, there's a variety of different use cases. Robocalling is one of them. And so they're trying to be the epicenter of that. Now, there's a lot of competitors in that space, to my understanding. NVIDIA chose these guys, which is why I think the market gave them 60% on their capital or on their equities. But it is kind of crazy to show the times that we're in that the market will literally be like, okay, NVIDIA invested, boom, we're in. And I guess that's just what's happening right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, going back to Google, my wife, she has the new Google Pro phone. I forget what Google 8 Pro. And it has this answering machine, which is pretty much it sounds very realistic. It's a robot, and it's like if you're calling her, but she doesn't want to pick up, but she's kind of curious, she can kind of ask, "Hey, what are you calling about?" And the kind of a assistant picks up and it's like, "Hey, you're reaching this number. They want to know what you're calling about." And then in real time, she gets a transcript on her phone saying what the other person said. So it's like, oh, this person is just a telemarketer, no point for me to pick it up. Or it might be someone important saying, hey, I want to talk about this and that. So it's pretty cool how we can kind of see just Gen AI in form of voice being used in just your typical consumer, but obviously in all the businesses that you kind of mentioned as well.
Agreed. Okay, again, leave you guys questions in the chat. I already see some questions and we'll answer them right at the end of the pod. So let's get into the big topic of the day. NVIDIA earnings are coming up, and it's going to be very fun to end up seeing what happens, how the market reacts, and where the market takes this bad boy, and really what the trajectory the market thinks AI companies will be on. I want to share one thing from my side, then we'll watch a little video, and then we'll get your thoughts, Jose. So here's a report Loop Capital put out this afternoon. They project 2026 revenue for NVIDIA at $175 billion. The street consensus expects it to be $109 billion. Now, either Loop's going to be right or Loop's going to be wrong. This is what makes a market and makes it very fun, right? There's got to be a winner or loser here. But there is a delta of 60%. So there's something that Loop's research is suggesting, and a couple of their firms on the street, like Oppenheimer, that are very bullish, that says NVIDIA is just going to keep going, and the street has it wrong, indicating that we should be even more bullish than we are. And other consensus and analysts say, well, we should be bullish, but not that bullish. And I think that's what's giving us a little bit of a paradox right now in terms of we know this stock is going to matter. We know this company is going to matter, but just how valuable is it going to be? So let's watch this video right here, just a little bit of this, and then we'll get into Jose's expectations for earnings.
Year following a red-hot rally for that chip powerhouse. UBS and Mizuho are the latest to boost targets ahead of earnings next week. It comes as the rest of the semiconductors painting a mixed picture in today's trade. Here with more on this is Ben Beharin, CEO and principal analyst at Creative Strategies. Ben, it is always good to have you on the show, my friend. And let me just dig right into NVIDIA. You know, Ben, listen, obviously we got the sell-off today. NVIDIA is slipping a bit in today's trade, Ben, but just pull back the chart. And what a move this name has made, Ben. You're up about 230% over the past 12 months. It's up, Ben, about 40% already this year. Does that kind of move, does it make sense to you, Ben?
Yeah, I think, again, right, you're looking at a company that's likely going to 2x revenue this year, if not more. Projections going into 2025 seem equally as strong. And we're in this cycle where we just have so much demand for compute, and in this case, GPU compute, thanks to AI, and not enough supply. And so when you hear about what NVIDIA is trying to do to secure more capacity, to try to make sure they can sell more GPUs and get to the market what they want, the software market, what they want to keep advancing AI, you realize we're up against these limits of really supply, right? Not necessarily demand. So it feels like that's not going away anytime soon. It may eventually, but it doesn't look like that's on the short-term horizon. And you have a lot of that optimism really priced into their valuation at the moment.
All right, Jose, you've owned this bad boy for 5-6 years now. What do you think is going to happen in 5 days?
Yeah. So NVIDIA, I mean, one thing that, I mean, the first, let's start off with that 2026 estimate. Pretty insane. But I think right now in this market, you have to sometimes think a little bit crazy. If you are familiar with the AI market yesterday, or I think yesterday, OpenAI released a new AI solution. It's called
Yeah.
Sora.
Yeah.
And
Well, you keep talking. I'll play it because there's no audio. So go ahead. You keep talking.
and Sora is a image to video, text to video platform. I personally have played with a lot of other solutions out there. I played with Runway. I played with Pika Labs and other AI solutions, but the one OpenAI has released is insane. When thinking about OpenAI releasing something like this, the first thing I think about is one, it's crazy. Two, how much computational power do you need to be able to do these types of video solutions like this? And the answer is a lot of computational power. So obviously that bodes well for the AI market and for AI chips like the ones NVIDIA provides. Outside of that, this is the weakest we're going to see AI solutions. What's going to be the future, right? I personally didn't think AI to video was going to be this good this quickly, but then what are we going to get? 2-minute clips, 3-minute clips, 10-minute clips, maybe sound and voice that kind of sync up together, sound, voice, and text, all that happen at the same time. So there's a lot of opportunity for more computational power. So I do believe if AI keeps evolving the way it is, we're going to see huge demand for their data center solutions. Outside of that, we heard that, hey, supply is increasing for NVIDIA. We've heard from TSMC supply is increasing as well. So that's obviously going to help boost their revenue. And at the same time, we've heard from big players, Microsoft, all these other players, that they're going to continue to invest in AI servers. And that is not stopping anytime soon this year. So
Do you think the valuation at $2 trillion, almost more than Google, is getting a little stretched, even though you're saying all the stuff that you're saying, which is making sense? It's at a 50 PE, which is, not crazy, right?
It's a 50 PE. If you look at just the next 12 months, the PE is actually 35, which is not that crazy.
Oh, the forward PE is 35. Okay.
Yeah, 35. So that's not insane. I want to say at the end of the day, it's just going to depend if this AI market is real or not. And unfortunately, I can't guess that. And that's what's going to determine the winners or the losers. If this AI market is real, then 2 trillion is not a stretch, in my opinion. If this AI market is just a fad and it's nothing that's going to last, then yes, it's a stretch. And that's at the end of the day, that's what's going to have to be the driver here. Like autonomous vehicles, robotics. The company is releasing their B100 later this year. We're also going to finally see their CPU. We're going to see how their CPU compares to AMD and Intel. Are they going to be able to take market share in there? I do believe the answer is yes to some extent. So there's a lot of growth opportunities here for NVIDIA, but at the end of the day, it's just determines on how the market evolves from here. Let me just kind of pull up some numbers here. I kind of
while you're pulling that
Mm-hmm.
up, what I'll say is that if these numbers are not good, and again, I think they're going to be pretty damn good, but if they're just not what the street wants, which I really do think they're going to exceed expectations, but if I'm wrong here, I think a lot of other stocks are going to be in trouble. I mean, Palantir is going to be in trouble. AMD is going to be in trouble. Like it's going to cause a whirlwind where there are a lot of companies now. Investors start questioning, well, what are the overarching reasons we're giving a premium to a Palantir at this point, or a premium to an AMD? And so I think it's going to matter a lot, and that's why I think the market is so obsessed with these numbers actually coming out the right way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think especially in the semiconductor space, I'm not too sure how maybe Palantir might see it, because the market might see that, hey, look, NVIDIA, the AI chip demand is not as high. And these AI companies can probably continue to do well in AI without investing too heavy. So I guess it determines on how one views it,
Right.
the results, right? But we can see revenue is expected to be by analysts roughly $20 billion. Same time last year, that was $6 billion. So over 3x of revenue, year over year growth, and in quarter from versus just a quarter three, it's a growth of 2 billion. I do believe we are going to beat this expectation of 20.3 just because we are hearing a lot better results on the supply chain issue. So I do believe that helps out. I've also kind of looked at there was an analyst. I don't know if I have it open here. Let me see. No, I don't think I have it open here. But one of the recent analysts, I believe it was UBS, that just mentioned that NVIDIA is still their customers are still seeing an increase of NVIDIA's H100 despite lead times getting shorter. And normally that doesn't happen, right? If you have lead times getting shorter, you would expect to see maybe prices of the H100 going down. The other thing that's happening is this company is going to release their new chip in about 2 quarters from now.
Yeah, we talked about that last week, right? Yeah.
Mhm. And usually if a new chip comes out, you kind of tend to see the current chip go down in price, right? You're not gonna pay this if you're getting the PS6, if the PS6, PlayStation 6 comes out in 2 months from now, you're not gonna pay full price for the PlayStation 5, right? So the same theory happens here for chips, but that's not what they're seeing just because the overall demand is still so strong. There's still very high pricing power here for NVIDIA and their H100 solution. So I believe they're gonna blow out this quarter. I do believe they're gonna blow out guidance at least this quarter based on what we're seeing. Now it's going to be a guessing game for the upcoming quarters, though.
So you think they're going to blow it out? You think it's going to be good? That's your take.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'm with you. I think it's going to be good, and as long as it's decent, we should have a pretty good stock market, hopefully, for the next couple months if NVIDIA can keep it up. All right, we're going to move on to Q&A for the rest of the pod. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat. It could be about anything kind of in this semi space. Let's do the first question by Mr. Seymour Duck. I know American retail investors can't buy Samsung. I'm Canadian, but what are your thoughts on Samsung investing heavily in the foundry industry? Also, lots of rumors about OpenAI working with Samsung. So, Jose, what exactly is the foundry industry in the semi space, and any thoughts on Samsung?
Yeah, so the foundry business is pretty much the manufacturing of semiconductors. And when we think of AI chips, there's really only two main players, and one that's really entering in this space. The first one is the leader, TSMC. They're the biggest foundry player in advanced chips, which are usually your smaller chips. They have roughly 55 plus of the overall market. Samsung is the second player. They have the second biggest foundry and the second biggest market share with roughly 16%. Right now, what we are seeing globally is, and the third player that's really trying to enter the space is Intel. Intel's probably not going to have any meaningful percentage until maybe a few years from now, but they're definitely entering in this space. I want to say globally right now, the world doesn't want to have all their chips made in Taiwan. That's where most of the advanced chips are actually built right now, Taiwan, with TSMC. So right now, what we're seeing is a lot of countries, United States, Germany, a lot of countries in Europe, Japan, giving subsidies for countries to come build foundries in their country to kind of eliminate this kind of
dependency on
Taiwan. And right now, big players all around the world are expanding. TSMC, for example, is building plants here in Arizona in the United States. They're building in Germany. They built building two plants in Japan. Samsung is following through, and Intel obviously is building a lot of foundries in the around the world. In Arizona, expanding in Ohio, in Germany as well. I do believe they have one in Ireland as well.
So Samsung's not just a phone company.
Mm-mm.
It's like there's a lot more. They actually play a crucial role in the semiconductor supply chain world.
Yep, they're also one of the biggest memory makers. So they're a huge player in the semiconductor space. They're a huge memory maker. So it's weird, right? When we think of Samsung, we think of fridges or phones or some other appliances. But they're an important player here in the semiconductor space for sure. I personally don't invest much in the foundry business. I'd rather invest in the foundry equipment.
Why? Why not the business stuff?
Just because the business itself, you have too many competitors, and a lot of the equipment companies, they don't have much competition. They overlap in competitors, but I do believe there's there's going to be all these foundries that are going to be built around the world, but not all these foundries are going to be successful. But even if they're not successful, all those foundries are going to need equipment within their foundry. So I do believe at the end of the day, the biggest players are going to be in the foundry ecosystem are going to be the equipment players right now.
Okay, there you go. You got Jose dropping dimes on Samsung. You just know so much about this industry, dude. It's like you're just so in this world. So let's do this one. Is Intel on the rise due to the push from the government to build chips in the US? So we've heard this question a couple times. What do you think is the correlation between the government wanting chips in the US, kind of what you were just talking about, and Intel maybe being a player and Pat Gelsinger getting an opportunity for that?
Yeah, so Intel, like I mentioned, is one of the players that really wants to entry in manufacturing of semiconductors for external customers. They've actually built most of their chips are actually built in their own foundry, so they already are a big player, but they've only done it internally. Now they want to go and do it externally to other players. To build these fabs is pretty, or these foundries is pretty expensive. It's roughly $10 billion per foundry. So right now, Intel trying to expand in this market, in my opinion, is a great move as they're getting huge subsidies by the government here in the U.S. CHIPS Act. So I joke around, right? Intel is one that I don't own, but it's one that I do believe can benefit dramatically from this manufacturing expansion, especially with this AI push that's happening right now. I do believe Intel definitely has some. Intel might surprise us, right? Intel has been an underperformer minus last year. I think for almost a decade, Intel was an underperformer. I do believe Intel can actually be a really good one for the upcoming years due to their foundry business.
Yeah, and their guidance kind of sucked, right? I think they did 15 billion in revenue. They guided for 12 billion, so quarter over quarter was not growing. Intel bottomed at 23. Now they're at 43ish, but they hit almost 52, and they fell from 52 about 8 months ago. So it was a pretty amazing dip opportunity to buy. It's kind of been stuck in this $50 range for a very long time. So to see really good stock appreciation, that foundry business, particularly in the United States, because of all the geopolitical concerns and wanting to manufacture in our own home, that would have to really take off. And again, if NVIDIA says AI demand is there, maybe that really does help take off. But until then, I don't know if that's an investment thesis fully.
Yeah, and Intel also kind of has CPUs for the consumer market. They combat against AMD, and they have server CPUs. One of the big risks about a year ago was that they were going to continue to lose market share from AMD. And while that is still the case to some extent, I'm still very bullish in AMD. Intel has definitely shifted their engineering team around. And it does seem like the products that they are releasing for the consumer market and for the server market are a little bit stronger than prior. So it does seem like investors are giving it the benefit of the doubt that, hey, look, this one's not going to bleed too much from AMD, but AMD is my number 2 position. So I can't be too nice to Intel, right? I do expect that AMD is going to continue to take market share from this giant.
Okay, let's end it out with this last question. If SMCI was so good, why didn't NVIDIA just buy them? Why invest and play money games with orders? Any thoughts on that? Why didn't we just take them out?
I mean, NVIDIA it's really weird because
they tried to buy ARM, but they got rejected, right?
Yeah.
But SMCI is not ARM.
No.
Right?
I don't think NVIDIA is trying to get into the market of building computers or building super servers like that. It's something that would hurt margins a lot. Right, we've kind of realized that the hardware business is a low margin business to some extent, one with not too much of a moat. One thing, and let me just kind of pull it up real quick. DGX Systems.
Brofesco Joe says, "Are we playing NVIDIA next week?" I am not playing NVIDIA. If you've owned NVIDIA stock, you sit back and relax.
Yep,
I would heavily advise against buying those short-term options on NVIDIA next week, expecting it to pump because it might not. And
so let me just share my screen. So NVIDIA actually has this platform called DGX platform. And let me see if I can get a better image of this. So NVIDIA has actually given a blueprint of how to create supercomputers with their product. And many people were worried that, hey, look, NVIDIA is making these solutions. And here we can see it. So this is a DGX H100. It's pretty much like one rack that goes into these servers. And in this DGX H100, you have 8 NVIDIA H100s. You have 2 CPUs. You have your motherboard. You pretty much have a computer here, right? You have your RAM, your networking solutions, your power supplies, and stuff like that. NVIDIA has created a blueprint on how to design these servers, right? And when NVIDIA first started doing this, many people were thinking that, hey, look, NVIDIA is going out there and it's going to enter the hardware business. But that's not what NVIDIA did. NVIDIA was just wanted to showcase that, hey, look, if you're a server maker and you want to optimize your server building, we'll give you our blueprint. You'll be able to make servers in no time. Just buy our products, buy our solutions, and we'll give you the blueprint recipe.
Right.
So I think NVIDIA doesn't really care who they partner up here with these AI solutions. They're just ready to give it to anybody in the market. Hey, you want to make servers for us? Here's the blueprint. Go ahead and build as many as you want. We'll sell you all the H100 GPUs that we can, as long as you continue to build our system. So NVIDIA is kind of just creating a open source to some extent solution for other data server companies to build server using NVIDIA solutions. So I think that's the better move outside of buying Supermicro and kind of focusing in a business that's low margin to some extent and have other worries outside of their typical product.
So you're saying buy a company that actually has a moat like NVIDIA versus SMCI, but SMCI is the one that's up 10x in 3 days. So.
Yeah,
Oh
definitely.
my God, dude. Fucking crazy. Okay, real quick, this last question by Seymour Duck. I know you've done Nintendo videos in the past. Any thoughts on the rumored Switch 2 using a custom NVIDIA ARM chip?
Yeah, so I mean, I do believe Nintendo Switch 1 already uses a chip from NVIDIA. One thing, I don't know if we talked about it last week, where we heard reports that NVIDIA is opening up a custom chip. I think we did talk about it last week.
They're gonna help Amazon and Google and Meta make their chips so that they don't make it themselves and then gut them out of the business. Yeah.
So I do believe we're going to continue to see something like that in other markets. We're going to see it in the phone business, where companies like Qualcomm or MediaTek that build chips for the phone business outside of Apple are going to just use NVIDIA's IP. I mean, I'm guessing we're going to see something similar to this with the Nintendo Switch or any other play system or game console. At the end of the day, something like this is not going to be a revenue mover, right? It's not going to be something that's going to 10x revenue or anything like that. I think right now, unfortunately, NVIDIA is dependent, unfortunately, now to the data center space. And that's where it's going to be at. So wins like that are going to be great, but at the end of the day, it's all going to matter with the data center and the future, in my opinion, with robotics and things like autonomous driving and stuff like that. But that at the end of the day is going to fall into the data center realm.
Right. Okay, there we go. Chip chat number 3. Jose's Twitter and YouTube is in the chat. He spit a lot of hot fire on this episode. He's educating me every week, and I get the privilege of asking him some questions and hopefully give a little bit of my input on where the world is going when it comes to semiconductors. I've learned a lot, dude, already talking to you about this. We didn't talk about applied materials, but I guess we can talk about them next week after NVIDIA earnings, and we can do a little bit of a deep dive on like why that company is so important in the semiconductor supply chain as well.
Yeah, I can actually on next week also bring some cool semiconductor equipment plays. There's some cool plays that I believe are under $10 billion that I'm personally invested in and have very interesting niche.
Okay, so some all right, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. So small cap.
And then I also while obviously I have invested in NVIDIA. In the semiconductor space, I believe there's another market opportunity brewing within this industry that not many people are looking at. So maybe we can talk about that as well. I think there's a space that right now is seeing a lot of inventory correction, and usually we start to see stock prices decline a lot. And once that starts to pick back up, I do believe we're going to see stock prices in that industry kind of follow suit. So that's the one I'm personally investing right now. Maybe we can talk about that.
No, I'm excited for that because you know this space very well. So if you're excited about something that's at a hopefully decent valuation currently, that's not blown up like SMCI yet, then no, I think everyone would appreciate you bringing that to us. Mr. Seymour Duck, thank you for the $5 super chat. Thanks for the fire, Jose. Jose, when we meet in Jersey, I got a lot of beers to buy you with these super chats. So,
I do a lot of barbecues over the summer, so I'm gonna definitely send those invitations to you, and you feel free to pass by.
There we go. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Enjoy your weekend. I'll be live for Palantir Weekly at 11 p.m. and NVIDIA earnings next week. We'll see you probably next Friday. We'll break it all down. Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend. Good night.